Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, the national security chiefs of South Korea and the United States have reportedly agreed to not set a specific date for the transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. South Korea's military finds the wreckage of yet another unmanned aircraft, believed to be a North Korean drone, in waters of a South Korean island in the West Sea. Plus, world leaders from 30 countries, including 10 Arab states, vow to do whatever is necessary to defeat Islamic State militants. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, September 16th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you are tuned in to Daybreak. Well, we start this morning in Washington, where South Korea's top security chief Kim Kwan-jin is meeting with his American counterpart Susan Rice. Quoting diplomatic sources, South Korea's Yonhap news agency says both sides have agreed to not specify a set date for the transfer of wartime operational control from the US to South Korea. The date for the so-called OPCON transfer had been set for the end of 2015. Sources say Kim and Rice decided it best to continue monitoring the situation to see whether the conditions for the transfer have matured. Although we must stress nothing has been confirmed yet, as these discussions are ongoing, the sources say the Allies think maintaining a strong deterrence capability against North Korea is more important than setting the transfer date. We'll bring you more details on these developments as we get them. The 69th UN General Assembly gets underway on this Tuesday in New York City, and it's garnering extra attention here in South Korea, as one of the top agendas this year is the human rights situation north of the border in North Korea. A foreign ministerial meeting on the issue will be attended by South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se, US Secretary of State John Kerry, Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida, and many other European foreign chiefs. The move for open international discussions about the human rights conditions in North Korea, which are abysmal, follows failed attempts to secure the release of 3 American nationals detained in North Korea. Now, in a rare move, North Korea will send its Foreign Minister, Lee Soo-young, to New York to try and refute the argument and defend North Korea's human rights conditions. Meanwhile, South Korean President Park Geun-hye will give a keynote speech at the General Assembly next Wednesday. Back here in South Korea, and a drone, presumably from North Korea, has been discovered in waters off the western side of a border island with the North. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says the wreckage was collected by a fisherman on Monday afternoon while he was fishing in waters near the South Korean border island of Baekryong-do. The military said it was similar in appearance to a North Korean drone that was found in the south earlier this year. An investigation has been launched to determine its purpose and the timing of the crash. Now, new evidence to prove Japan's wartime atrocities has been revealed for the first time in more than 2 decades, and it will likely be used to counter Tokyo's repeated denials of its past sexual enslavement of tens of thousands of Asian women, many, in fact, from Korea. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
16 Korean women appear in a 15-minute video clip sharing accounts of how they were victimized by Japan's military. Publicized by the Association for the Pacific War Victims after 21 years, it's expected to be used to fire back at Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who has said no clear evidence exists to support claims of Japan's sexual enslavement of women.
They told us our country had been taken away and that we have to come to Japan to be forced to work. We never got paid.
The recording was taken during interviews by a Japanese government delegation sent to Korea in 1993, right before Tokyo issued its landmark Gono Statement apology. The head of the group said the video was not released at Tokyo's request, but that they've decided to reveal it now due to Japan's continued distortment of the truth. Although a majority 14 of the victims have since passed on, the group emphasized that proof remains alive. It plans to report the clip to the United Nations and reveal the video piece by piece, depending on the attitude of the Japanese government. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now staying with history, and 64 years ago, the first shots were fired in one of the most important battles of the Korean War. When the Battle of Incheon ended 4 days later, the course of the war had been altered, giving the advantage back to the South and its allies. To honor those who sacrificed their lives in that great battle, a ceremony was held on Monday at the site of the Battle of Incheon. Our Kim Hyun-bin reports.
On June 25, 1950, the Communist North launches a surprise attack. Within 3 days, North Korean forces have invaded Seoul, and a few days later, North Korea has the majority of the South in its grasp, with the exception of the southern port city of Busan. Weeks pass, and hopes fade, but on September 15th, the Allied forces, led by General Douglas MacArthur, begin to turn the tide. Some 75,000 troops and 261 vessels launch an amphibious invasion. The Battle of Incheon, as is known today, ends in a decisive victory for the United Nations. To commemorate the battle, a ceremony was held where it took place on Monday. More than 2,200 people attended, including Korean War veterans and government and military officials.
If it wasn't for the Battle of Incheon, the Republic of Korea would not exist. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to all the veterans from all 63 countries.
To provide a better understanding of the historic battle, soldiers from the Korean Navy and Marines staged a reenactment using Aegis destroyer and various air and sea landing crafts. It brought back painful memories for some in attendance, who lived through the battle 64 years ago.
Who knew we would partake in the Battle of Incheon? By doing so, we took back Seoul, but I would really like to be with my fallen comrades, or at least see them in my dreams.
As the saying goes, forgive but don't forget. This ceremony not only serves to pay respect to the fallen, but to show this generation and generations to come of how lucky they are to enjoy the freedoms they have today. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News, Incheon.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Tuesday morning here in Korea. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim, standing by at our news center. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. Top diplomats from Arab and Western nations confirmed their resolve to fight Islamic State militants in Iraq by all means necessary, including appropriate military assistance. Following an international summit in Paris on Monday, a joint communique was signed by 26 nations outlining that will. They said military help would be provided to Iraq upon request, though it did not specify which Arab nations would join in conducting airstrikes on militant targets when deemed necessary. Co-host to the conference, Iraq's President Fouad Massoum said action must come quickly, a sentiment echoed by French President François Hollande, who said his country had already begun surveillance flights over Iraq. Meanwhile, Iran has rejected the global plan to fight the militant group, saying that any U.S. incursion would repeat the same mistakes made in Iraq 10 years ago. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei claimed on Monday that the U.S. had asked for Iran's cooperation via diplomatic channels. Iran and Syria were not represented at the Paris summit. This as U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder announced a pilot program by its Justice Ministry to partner with local leaders to prevent American extremists from joining terrorist groups like the Islamic State. The International Organization for Migration estimates more than 2,500 people have drowned in the Mediterranean this year. The group said just last week some 500 migrants were feared dead after their ship was rammed by another boat near Malta, with survivors saying the boat bound for Egypt had been intentionally sunk by traffickers. The United Nations estimates more than 130,000 migrants arrived in Europe by sea this year. That's up from 80,000 last year, many of whom traveled from North Africa and the Middle East in overcrowded ships. And we are less than 3 days away from the referendum day in Scotland, when citizens there will vote on whether or not to declare independence from the United Kingdom after 307 years in the Union. In a final pitch in Scotland, British Prime Minister David Cameron urged Scots to vote to say no, warning of a painful divorce otherwise, underlining that there would be no going back and no rerun if Scotland votes yes. Opinion polls on the referendum remains too close to call. Queen Elizabeth II also broke her silence on Sunday and urged Scots to think very carefully about the future. Buckingham Palace clarified that the Queen remained neutral before Thursday's vote. And in tech news, first-day iPhone orders hit a new high, logging a record 4 million orders, which was double the number for the iPhone 5 2 years ago. Apple said deliveries will begin on Friday and continue through the month of October as demand overran supply for both the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, which feature larger screen sizes and longer battery life. Analysts say they expect sales of the two iPhone models will top 9 million in the first weekend.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, in domestic politics, the interim chief of Korea's main opposition party appears to be on the brink of resigning, with the party seemingly irrevocably split down factional lines. If Park Yeon-sun decides she has had enough and throws in the towel, the Liberal camp will plunge further into disarray, especially since barely a month has passed since the figureheads of the alliance stepped down. Our Jim Young-gil reports.
Park Yeon-sun of the New Politics Alliance for Democracy doesn't just appear to be thinking about stepping down as interim chief. There are speculations she may even quit the party altogether. It comes amid pressure from within the main opposition bloc to step down both as the chief of its emergency committee and as its floor leader.
We've been urging floor leader Park Yeon-sun for her voluntary resignation. If she does not step down, we will have to put some pressure on her to do so.
The contention stems from Park's handling of a special bill that would set up an investigation into April's ferry disaster. Park on two separate occasions reached agreements with the ruling Saenuri party on the legislation, but both times the compromise was met with fierce criticism from the victims' families and from within her own party. Park looked to step aside last week by appointing two co-chairmen to lead its emergency committee, but the proposal was quickly batted down by senior party members, who objected to those who were nominated. With Park on the outs, veteran lawmakers with the opposition party have already begun thinking about who her replacement should be and call for someone who is more moderate. Whoever that next leader is will walk into a party torn apart by factionalism and infighting. The party also remains at odds with the ruling Saenuri party at the National Assembly, which has passed 0 bills in recent months because of the ferry bill standoff. Jim Young-gil, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye kicked off her week by pushing on with efforts to make Korea a so-called creative economy. Meeting with business leaders in the country's southeastern city of Daegu on Monday, the president said she will expand financial support to the country's small and mid-sized firms next year to $7.6 billion, which is on top of another $1 billion set aside to facilitate investment for SMEs outside of the capital, Seoul. marking an expansion of Daegu's so-called Creative Economic Innovation Center. The president stressed the need to utilize creativity as a means to unleash growth and expand jobs. The Daegu Center is the first out of the government's 17 designated innovation centers to have signed agreements with a private firm. It will work with the nation's biggest conglomerate, Samsung, to offer counseling and financial aid for innovation-driven local SMEs and ventures. Fewer investors in Korea are earning profits from company dividends as more firms are saving their excess cash for a rainy day. Chaebol.com says just 25 listed companies have had a dividend yield ratio that surpasses 5% on average over the past 3 years. And among those 25, none, in fact, were conglomerates. And some observers believe this is a sign of cash hoarding by the nation's chaebol groups. The National Assembly Budget Office says capital reserves by Korean companies in 2012 was almost 30 times higher than the total in 1990. This comes a month after Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan announced measures intended to induce the nation's largest companies to tap into those huge reserves to encourage economic growth. Now, instead of Korea's economic growth, we've been seeing an exponential growth in the number of visitors from China coming over the West Sea to Korea. And this is having a startling effect on the stock prices of Korean firms that are very heavily involved in the tourism sector. Hwang Jie has the details.
In Seoul's bustling shopping district of Myeongdong, it's very easy to find Chinese tourists, and the ever-increasing number of visitors from China is driving strong gains in tourism-related shares. According to the Korea Exchange, the stock prices of 31 firms listed on the local bourse whose brands are popular among the Chinese have risen 51% on average since the end of last year. Contrast that against the 1.1% gain the benchmark Kospi posted over the same period. Because of this, many Korean businesses that used to rely on domestic consumption by Koreans are eyeing these high-spending customers from across the West Sea. In general, Chinese people are much wealthier than they used to be. China's gross national income per capita last year stood at over $6,700. That's more than 5 times higher than in 2003. And due to the popularity of Korean pop culture in China, experts say the country's spending power has a massive impact on Korean companies, particularly those in the entertainment, cosmetic, and clothing industries. And with more Chinese tourists forecast to visit Korea during the upcoming Chinese holiday season early next month and the Incheon Asian Games that kick off this week, expectations are high that they'll give domestic demand in Korea a much-needed boost. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
Now, the excitement is building to a fever pitch here in Korea as the 17th Asian Games kick off in a mere 3 days' time, with a grand opening ceremony in Korea's western port city of Incheon, which is the host city, of course. From South Korea's prospects to North Korea's participation, our Song Ji-sun has a preview of the continent's biggest and best sporting event.
The Asian Games is Asia's biggest sports celebration. This year's 16-day event, being held in the South Korean port city of Incheon, will showcase the talents of some 10,000 athletes. North Korean athletes will be among them, and the first wave of their delegation arrived in the South last Thursday. But North Korean cheerleaders will not be making the trip. They were in hand for the Asian Games in Busan back in 2002, but are skipping this year's event after failing to reach an agreement with the South over their accommodations and expenses. Looking ahead to the competition, South Korea is aiming for a top 2 finish in the overall medal count for the 5th consecutive event, with its eye on winning at least 90 golds. China has been a fixture atop the medal count dating all the way back to the 1982 Games. Preliminaries for several sports kicked off over the weekend, and Team South Korea got off to a quick start. The men's football team beat Malaysia 3-0, and the women's squad trounced Thailand 5-0. If you want to catch some of the action in person, the organizing committee announced that only 20% of the overall tickets have been sold as of this Monday. Seats are also still available for Friday's opening ceremony, which starts at 6 p.m. For more information, visit incheon2014ag.com. 송지선, Arirang News.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off in the LPGA, where 19-year-old Kim Hyo-ju has jumped up quite a bit in the latest world rankings after that impressive win at the Avian Championship over the weekend. Now, the teen sensation, who recently made the top 20 ranking for the first time in her career, went from being ranked 20th in the world to number 10 after winning her first LPGA Tour major. Meanwhile, Carrie Webb, who finished second this past weekend, jumped up 4 spots and overtook Ryu So-yeon for the 5th spot. And now moving over to the upcoming Incheon Asian Games, as the opening ceremony is set to kick off on Friday. And it was announced on Monday that Olympic wrestling gold medalist Kim Hyun-woo will be the flag bearer for Korea. The Korean Olympic Committee on Monday confirmed that Kim Hyun-woo will carry the national flag at the opening ceremony. Now, the 25-year-old won gold medal during the 2012 London Games during the 66-kilogram Greco-Roman wrestling competition, and also won gold during the 2013 Budapest World Championships in the 74-kilogram competition as well. And staying with the Asian Games, with Korea's Pro Baseball League now on a break, the Asian Games team got together on Monday and held a press conference kicking off their hunt for the gold medal. With the press conference taking place with the entire team on hand, manager Lee Jung-il, who led the Samsung Lions to 3 straight Korea Series victories, stated that the team will win all 5 games and win the Asian Games gold. With confidence oozing out from the entire team, they're set to begin training in Jamsil Stadium before holding an exhibition game against the LG Twins later in the week. Now, not a lot of people might be following up on the U16 AFC Championship, which is currently taking place in Bangkok, but if there's one reason to watch it, it's Lee Seung-woo. Now, the 16-year-old, who currently plays for Barcelona's youth team, has been called the next Leo Messi by many experts. And after scoring 2 goals against Japan during the quarterfinals, more and more eyes are on the boy wonder, as Korea is set to face off against Syria during the semifinals on Wednesday. And now finishing things off in the PGA, Billy Horschel, who played the best golf of his life in the past 4 weeks, capped it all off with a PGA Tour Championship victory over the weekend. And his prize, $10 million. Horschel, who won $3.5 million in prize money during the past 3 tournaments, capped it all off with a Tour Championship victory to claim the FedEx Cup and its $10 million bonus. Pulling away from Rory McIlroy early and holding off Jim Furyk late in the round, Billy Horschel completes the greatest month of his life. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Well, today should be a bit brighter than yesterday under partly sunny skies, though morning commuters in the inland area should be extra cautious this morning as we are seeing light layers of fog in those areas, but it should gradually burn off as the day goes on. So the whole nation can expect to see a typical beautiful autumn weather today, and temperature changes though will persist, so please take good care of your health to avoid getting a cold. Upper teen morning lows will rise to mid-20s afternoon highs, which is similar to yesterday. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. Well, the morning low here in Seoul dropped to 17 overnight, but the high in the capital, Gwangju and Busan, should all rise to 27, while Daegu will peak at 28 this afternoon. Now, for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 26. Dokdo should see highs of 23, while Mount Keungang gets up to 14. Well, that's all I have for you at this hour, and hope you have a wonderful start to the day.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the weather there, Gian. And that's going to do it for us for today. But Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour with many more stories. And have a great rest of the day. And thanks for watching. Goodbye.